Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. I'm your host, Kieran Lewis, a freelance graphic designer based in London. And today's stream, we have Bristol-based designer and artist, Diana Herrara. Diana, how are you doing today?
All good, Karen. Nice to
Yeah,
see you today.
awesome. I hope you're excited for our 2-day stream. I know I am. I can see as well everyone in the chat coming in thick and fast. A massive hello to Cody, Jack, Brian, Biola, Oliver, Kathleen, and many, many more. So massive thank you for joining us. If you're on YouTube, Behance, as always, get those comments in the chat and I will share them directly with Diana while she's designing some lovely work for you guys. So before we really dive into it all, just one thing to mention to you, lovely people. If you missed the previous stream, you can catch the replay on Behance and YouTube. Check out the photo editing with Zia Suarez as she shows us how to find your own unique editing style and fit into your own social media for lifestyle photography. So, on that note, Diana, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience about who you are and also what we're working on for today's stream?
Sure. So my name is Diana Beltran Herrara. I'm from Colombia. I am an industrial designer and I have an MA in fine art. And I work mainly with paper. Paper is my main medium. And through today's stream, I will be sharing you how I use Illustrator and Photoshop in between my process. So my process is mainly handmade. I create illustrations, sculptures, photography, and installations with paper. I don't know if people can see my website, but I can share with you a little bit of what I do, if that is
Yeah, definitely.
of interest. So I do work for mostly commercial now. I used to do like personal projects before, but now things start changing. And now the things that I do are mainly nature and a lot of colors. So yeah, what I use paper for is to create these different designs. I'm interested in how with my
Beautiful
work
work.
I can convey a message about the environment and nature and how I can transform the medium in these really interesting and tricky things.
I remember when I was, excuse me, checking out your work before. I mean, I was in awe with your designs, and I mean, it's so clean and the colors as well, right? I mean, it's. I can see people in the chat already loving your work from the comments. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful work. And you mentioned that idea. You mentioned you work a lot of paper and print, and I know today we'll touch on a bit of obviously the digital elements, but also how you kind of work between the two. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing work. And when we've got Oliver who said, Diana, amazing work. And Cody's also loving your paperwork too. So it's all positive vibes from the lovely people in the chat. So Diana, what are we working on today for today's stream?
Yeah, so since I joined this lovely agency Closer and Closer last year, I've been kind of drifting into more illustration work, which has been really great for me as as a way to grow. So I also feel very passionate about postage stamp, and I was thinking today about how much I like this kind of objects and communication pieces that are printed on paper that are quite objectual. So I was thinking today about the banknotes and the postage stamps and how paper, how in these small formats you can get to see like these really beautiful artworks and these beautiful illustrations. Because I am started to drift towards illustration in my work. I feel very shy about it because it's not like my main. I used to do more sculptural work before. So I feel like because the postage stamps are kind of square and small, they kind of give me some limitations that I feel if I want to explore them, it's not like a huge amount of work that I have to create. So I have some boundaries. And I also love how, connected art to the everyday life in the UK because we use them so much in the post. So today I wanted to start working on a little campaign that I have this idea the other day about nature and maybe just convey little messages through these little images. So I was thinking very positive messages to protect the environment and look after our beautiful planet and just start developing these as illustrations. And then tomorrow we will turn them into paper and then transform them. So
Nice.
that's
I mean,
the
you made a very good point about the obviously the space that you have to work with in it because it's so limited, right? You're in that way where do you find just out of curiosity that that limitation is a good thing because you're kind of having to make the most with the space that you have, in opposed to say you had a bigger canvas? How do you find that kind of the dynamic of having to work within a much smaller space? Do you prefer it, or would you much rather work on a bigger canvas, say, depending on the design?
Because I always, I'm always been a person to work in a small, in a small size. I don't see myself working like also because my work is so time consuming that by the time that I get to finish like a massive 1 meter by 1 meter, I'm tired. So I think if I play it safe
Yeah.
as, a small size, it means that I can put a lot of detail and then change the artwork really quickly. So what happens with my work is the illustration is not the final outcome, is the paper sculpture that hides behind the photography. So the process is very long and extensive. So when I'm working in a big piece, I feel I'm lose interest halfway, and also they're very time consuming. So if I cut them down and start piecing them up in small pieces, it means that I can move quicker, like make one of these pieces in a day or two. And like time is money these days. So
it is, no, and I mean, I feel like for most creatives, all people just in general, and I know for myself, my attention span can be quite short sometimes. So kind of working on things where you can move on to the next. And I mean, what we're seeing now on the screen is a beautiful collection of stamps. And were you saying we're going to go into each single one and sort of create how that background of how you designed it from a
so the idea is that this is like kind of the sketch version of it. So I'm going to focus on the one with fish. So I'm going to create a similar one with a different fish now. And I'm going to start showing the process, because the process of designing things in Illustrator, it's to serve the purpose that they are going to be cut and made physical. So we really need to think about clean vectors, layering, and a well-organized kind of workspace to have every single element that I anticipate and need for when the cutting process comes. Then it saves time, so I don't have to do this by hand. So that is the main purpose of today's. Yeah.
And I know as well for anyone in the chat, before we came on stream, I mean, even when myself and Diana spoke before, we were checking out Diana's studio, which some of you can maybe see on the screen from the back. But I know how organized, Diana, and like precise you are with your screen. So when you're just saying about how precise of your work, I can see the correlation between that and also your kind of work setup and space. Because you're in your studio based in Bristol, is that right?
Yeah, I am based in Bristol. And really happy to be here.
Right. And for you, for a lot of people in the chat, you're thinking, where's Bristol for you? Fact, you are US people. That's sort of southern western of England, southwest England. So yeah. So I feel that today's perhaps an all English stream actually in terms of where we're based, because usually we have it in the US. But and on that topic, and let us know where in the chat you're actually streaming from. If you're in the UK or from the US, we would love to hear. And of course, those questions whilst Diana is obviously designing, get them in the chat and I will share them directly with Diana as she creates some lovely posters for you people.
So should we get started?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go for it. So I'm going to be drawing from my iPad because I find it a lot quicker and easier than be drawing from the computer. Nice. And I kind of so like the whole thing started because I was searching about I've been doing some postage stamps before, and kind of was looking as how they are quite modern and current, but we had that idea that they are quite vintage and old. But we still need them and we still use them, and they're still very popular, especially like in Europe and in the US. So I came across this beautiful selection of these new designs of the Netherlands stamps that came in like 2-3 years ago. And I really like the colors and the simplicity of them, how futuristic and graphic they look like. So this is what I was kind of aiming for my project. And I also chose a nice selection. There are some beautiful ones. The other reason why I like stamps is because when I used to do sculpture, I cannot refer to a picture, like an image of a photograph. It's very difficult because there's so much information, and it's difficult to kind of reduce it and summarize it. So when I look into illustration is already kind of a reduced form of something. So it's already giving me like some boundaries within the element that I want to work. So stamps, banknotes, vintage illustration books are my go-to place when I need inspiration and resources for my work. So that's why I choose these ones. And some of them are also very graphical already. So when I look at this image, for example, I am already thinking, how can I convert this into paper? So I need to see the layering of something before. And it doesn't work when you look like, for example, if I've chosen this one is very complicated and it has a lot of elements. So to try to dissect that and simplify that into like a paper layer cut, it's very difficult. So then the ones that draw my attention are the ones that are already a little bit more resolved. And
I mean, there are beautiful. I mean, just to add to that, I mean, there is. I feel like for anyone to chat as well, hopefully you agree. But that's a strong collection of fishes that you have there, Diana. And where you mentioned obviously for research and when you kind of find visuals, where do you kind of go for? Because obviously the world's a big place. We have online or go to libraries, or where do you tend to kind of find your research and visual examples from?
Yeah, sure. So I show you in my computer. I always go to Pinterest, I have to say that.
Okay.
And I like it about Pinterest because I mean I have a look all my boards. Let's see if I can find it.
Nice and neat and collected. I love it.
Yeah, I love almost like if you look on Google, it's just crazy. Behance I like, but it gets lost. So I like to be able to pin the things that I like. And sometimes it's really convenient because like they have a lot of links to Flickr accounts. And on Flickr accounts, usually people do a big archives about vintage illustration. So when I start finding images like this, and then I go to Flickr, I also find, for example, like the name of the person that did this illustration, and then I start finding all the online archives that are related with that old illustration from, like, imagine this is 1828.
That's quite nice to sorry, just to add, sorry, no, go for it.
Yeah, no, so I just love the interpretation that people in those years have of nature, because if you look at these days, we have more access of like photography and things, so we are more able to do things more accurately. But they have really good if you think like these things weren't photographed, they was just kind of capturing your brain and then trying to redraw something. I find that interesting. So Pinterest is like my go place. For the postage stamps, there are sites that keep like catalogs of them.
Okay.
But because I researched them a lot, then I have a few, like the Israel are my favorite, Australia, really good. Argentina have some really good ones. So I'm always looking to those, information about color and shape and background, and I find them so beautiful already. Sometimes when I'm working in paper, I feel like I see something that I really like and I feel I want to do that in paper. Just
your brain can operates in that way.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice to see. And I know it'd be curious to know for those in the chat, because again, everyone's got the different ways of how they find. Obviously, you mentioned Pinterest is that's your kind of baby in terms of where you kind of go to. You've got, for example, Behance as well, where you have different platforms. But also, there's a lot of different things online. You can, and it'd be great to know in the chat, where do you guys kind of go for your inspiration? Do you even watch Adobe Live? Hopefully that could be one of them. Let us know in the chat, where do you get your inspiration from? And I'll share that with Diana. I'm sure she'd love to hear it while she's designing.
Yeah, like the other thing I've been doing recently, Behance is great for me. I love having a look in there, and I also like having a look at books. So I've been going to the library and just
nice.
I guess that in the more places that you look, the better of the amount of information that you can get with your work. So also it helps to create kind of your sense of what is that you like and what is that you're aiming. Because like I don't consider myself as an illustrator. I use Illustrator and I do illustration as a tool for my process. But since I am starting to do this more fully, it's like, what are how do I want my work to look like? And trying to aim for that style, that particular style that I want to be with my work. And it's really interesting after doing some, types of work recently that it doesn't come straight in. But if you work it like a month or 2 or 3 months on the same thing every single day, you start feeling like you're getting better at understanding the colors, the proportions, the place. So it's like, for me, it's more like a challenge of trying to see how far I can get with my work.
And I think that's just to kind of add on what you said. I mean, that's a brilliant point, because it's all like trial and error, isn't it? It's especially if you're just starting out. We've got quite a range of audience that views us, whether it's students, grads, or if you're just curious about design. And the best thing is, always practice and try. I feel like we're kind of perhaps living in an age where it looks too shiny and perfect on social media, but actually things take time to create. It's a process, right? So what Diana was kind of saying to to the audience as well is definitely keep practicing and to create. And I'm loving what you're doing right now, Diana, where you're kind of overlapping. You're not doing it too neat, but just kind of getting that outline just for the visuals so you can see where things are placed. That's cool.
Yeah, so the idea, the idea is not to copy something exactly as you see it, so it just serves as a reference. But obviously, when I start doing these elements, I start kind of dissecting them into what are the main pieces. So I have the main body, and then I have the tail and the fins, and I'm already starting to select the pieces that I will use when I start to do my layering in paper. So.
Nice.
At the beginning, it's just trying to recognize what are the elements that I need. And then once I have them defined, then I start giving them detail. And then, we do this for a bit, and then maybe halfway, then I just jump into one and start putting all the elements together. So it's a lot easier, and it doesn't we don't kill all the time in here.
No, not at all. And I can see obviously obviously you're working via an iPad now. I mean, obviously you're very much hands-on working with print, but when it comes to sort of digital element, is an iPad what you tend to use maybe, or more like a desktop, laptop? What's your kind of setup? Would you say on a day-to-day
so
basis?
I used to draw with a Wacom directly into the computer on my computer, and I felt that it really loose. It just takes too long to try to get the organic shapes and all that. And so when I got the iPad, I felt really, it's just really natural because, just anything that you want, you just can draw it on top of it. And also after that, then I import all my files into Illustrator in the computer. And once I am in the computer, then I start putting them. So I do a mix of both. My set, I like a big screen, so I have an iMac. Nice. I can't work on a laptop anymore because I feel, especially when I'm doing photography, I'm using the screen of my computer as my kind of visual screen of what I'm shooting live. So bigger that it is, the better for me. So I try to have like that functionality because of the photography.
No, I get that. It's interesting. I find as well, it's usually if I'm traveling, say abroad, for example, you're on a plane, and you got things to do. I try and work on a laptop, but again, perhaps it's my fingers on such a small trackpad. You almost need, well, for myself, a much bigger screen to kind of really, immerse yourself within the design. And I feel like the laptop is more for perhaps watching and maybe getting some research, but the actual design is very much desktop, like you said, Wacom tablet, and get creating. It'd be great to know in the chat, what's your kind of setups? Do you are you happy with laptops? Do you like to kind of sit in different places, potentially coffee shops, just saying, or are you more of a desktop and you need things big? And what's your setup? Let us know in the chat. It's always nice to kind of nice to share.
Yeah, like I want to get me a laptop soon because I feel it adds to what I'm doing, but I feel like the main part is just being this. I have the studio, so it's like, it's my place to go. Obviously the computer is one of the elements that I use for my work, so it's like half outside of the computer, the other half is in the computer. So I don't feel like a laptop really does. And I used to have a laptop, but I have to bring it in my bag every single day, and I hate that I have to carry it because it was too heavy. So then I realized like I can't be bothered with this anymore.
I love that. We need to start developing almost like glasses where you can just design it, just put glasses on, like Google glasses almost, right? And just make some technology that makes it easier for us designers to carry around. Who knows? Who knows where the world will go in terms of technology?
All the practicality that you need to have in mind when you're working, and like especially I carry so many things in my bag because I always carry materials. So having to carry another thing, it's a bit much for me. So I decided, the iPad is great. The iPad is very lightweight, and then you can pull it out anywhere. That the only thing is that there are functions within the Illustrator in the iPad that you don't have in the program itself. So that's what I feel like. I do kind of the drawing in here, and then I jump in the computer, and then I start refining and fixing, and because there are things in here that get missed, but there are others that are really quick. So in terms on just getting the job done quicker, I quite like it in here too.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, you made a really good point of actually working on iPads, and that's the beauty with especially with a lot of, with Adobe Live and the work that we do. There's always tutorials that you can learn and things that just make it easier for you guys to kind of work, whether it's remotely, whether it's in office. So definitely, even when myself and Diana are not doing our stream, there's many streams you can keep on watching, and each one's kind of designed to sharpen your skills, but also just have fun with it as well. I mean, we can see right now we're designing but right now, it's there to have fun, it's there to create, and obviously to share as well, right? It's not just good to just keep it locked away in the hard drive and never see the light of day. It's always nice to it's nice to share. And I can see on that topic of sharing, everyone's kind of putting where they're based right now in terms of location. We've got UK Midland, Chicago, where else? Philadelphia. Everyone's here for you, Dinah. They're all around the world. They've come to
Oh,
watch
that's
your stream.
great.
So thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's great
Yeah,
that we can connect these days through platforms like this,
exactly.
in real time. So
Yeah,
thank you everyone for coming, and I hope that that you enjoy what I'm going to be making.
yeah. And what's I'm quite curious. Obviously, we mentioned we're both in the UK, but I've never actually been to Bristol before. What's Bristol saying for like the creative scene? Art scenes. I feel like it's quite strong though, from what I've heard. But
Yeah, I
obviously
think
you're on the ground. You let us know.
yeah, so this street art is really strong. So we have this festival every year called Upfest in June or in
Mm,
July, and it's like they just paint basically. They don't paint the whole city, but I live in this neighborhood that is very creative.
okay.
So it's really nice because everything is happening in these neighborhoods, kind of artsy related. There is a lot of, the music scene is very strong.
Nice.
A lot of, festivals, and we also have the balloon fiesta in August, which is really beautiful because these balloons just take off from a lovely place called Ashton Court. And then
Okay.
in general, it's a small city. It's very
Mm,
clean. It's surrounded by forests, and then you get to see like the suspension bridge, which is like a stunning
nice.
engineering piece from very, very long time ago. And yeah, I think
Nice.
it's very close to London, it's very close
Mm.
to Wales, it's just in the middle of everything. So it's
Well, there
such
we
a
go. Yeah,
such a
for you guys on the chat, if you've never heard of Bristol, I feel like Diana's done a perfect job of selling it in terms of location. So if you can get a chance to visit, definitely go over there and pop in and pop in and see Diana as well in the studio, perhaps.
Yeah,
Say hi.
it's very easy. It's a very easygoing city. I
Mm.
don't have to catch the bus anytime, especially
Okay,
during COVID, when
nice.
transportation was very important and you can cycle anywhere and everywhere. Everything is just
Mm.
it's just like a little. People call it like a little town.
Nice.
It's like a city town, and then you
Yeah,
have everything that you need. Also the airport is really cool because we have an airport, which means that we can just get anywhere from here, which I
there we
love.
go. All these
So.
beautiful selling points for Bristol. We need to check that out. And I mean, we're about sort of, so say, half an hour into the stream. So if you have, just joined in now, a massive welcome. And you're thinking, what on earth are we working on? So we have the wonderful artist and designer, Diana Herrera, and we are creating some postage stamp collections. And right now we are creating some lovely designs. In particular, we're focusing on the fins. Am I right in saying that, Diana?
Yeah,
The
I'm
fin
working on the
section? Yeah.
fins now,
There we
which
go.
is like so when I'm been layering the pieces, and then at the end everything works like a paper cut. So if you
Nice.
see all of these, I will be cutting all of these silhouettes from the computer. So this is what I'm getting ready, and then I start laying them on top,
Nice.
and then I
Yeah.
start building my fish again.
Mm.
So what I'm doing digitally, I'm going to be making it by hand.
Okay.
And one of the things that I enjoy by looking at a lot of illustration work these days is the amount of textures that artists imply in their work, because it's
Mm.
like a very strong characteristic of modern illustration these days. And I'm always trying to see what is the best material or what is the best type of paint or effect that I could get for
Mm.
my handmade work to look with those characteristics. So what I will be
Nice.
doing with this fish is using a spray paint for this one. Sometimes
Okay.
I use watercolor. Watercolor is really nice in the paper because then you can get like, soft tones and
Mm.
things. Sometimes I use acrylic if I want like a really bold and strong color. But
Yeah.
spray paint seems to me like the most fun and enjoyable to do these days because I can get
Nice.
so many combinations of colors,
Mm, mm.
so many opportunities to develop color in a way. So when I started working with paper, I didn't do exactly paint the paper all the time. It was more like, you just work with the reference of color that you get. But then that's quite limiting, because sometimes you just want this particular green or this gradient, and then you're thinking like, how can I achieve that? And I started exploring last year with a spray paint, and I found this water-based spray paint that they are producing now, which is very good for like working
Nice.
indoors. Because like when
Nice.
you think about spray paint, and I spray paint indoors, and I spend very small pieces, it was really difficult to live with that, because
The fumes, no?
the fumes are very
Yeah,
strong. So
true.
now they are developing this line of water-based spray paint cans, which are for indoor use. And when I found those, I was so excited.
Like a
Because,
godsend in a way, isn't it? It's really cool to hear, like, the different mediums that you work with. And I know obviously a lot of, perhaps, with Adobe Live that we do, it's very much digital, but it's really cool to obviously, I know you mentioned you're very much working within print, but you obviously have the skills in digital too. And it's nice to sort of see how you're combining the two together. And we've got a lovely comment from Cody, who said that she loves how you've kind of got the digital work, which looks like cutout papers too, even though we're on a digital platform. So it's nice to kind of see how you kind of brought that in, and that
yeah,
element
for
in there.
example, and this is it. Is I mean, sometimes I think, why do I complicate my life so much? Because
We're
it's like
designers.
it's a process
Yeah.
that never ends. It's always, but this is what I find interesting. I find interesting that you are always searching for more, and with that, like curiosity that you have within your work, you just get to places that you never imagined that you could ever get. And so every time you are opening, like, I have to tell you, I wasn't very good at Photoshop before we talk about doing this stream. But because I said that I was going to use Photoshop as one of the tools, I spent this week to do a few tutorials. And it was amazing, because
Nice.
I never had the time to do tutorials in
Okay.
Photoshop in my life. And what I discovered this week with Photoshop is like,
Yeah.
I don't need to overcomplicate my life anymore, because Photoshop, I can Photoshop it all if I know how
Yeah.
to do it. And I found a revealing, it was like, wow, the light that I was
You
looking
saw the
for.
light. I love that.
I saw the light this week. And what
Okay.
I'm going to show you yesterday when you come back to the stream is like where I learned that I could push my paperwork in a digital form to get the
Ah.
feeling
Okay.
of what I used to do in a photograph. So basically what I do with all these elements is like I cut them, and then I start layering them, and then I photograph them. But when you're taking a photograph, you need to be, the light and the position of the light, and also the layering. And some pieces, like for example, this piece is very small. So how do you lay this piece on top of this piece, and you create air between the two pieces? If we're talking that this piece is not going to be bigger than 20 centimeters, then it gives me very small room inside my artwork to find supports with hidden inside, so I can create the layering. But if I take all these pieces individually and I jump into Photoshop, and then I start adding one by one in the way that I'm doing, and I start adding the shadows, I can manipulate every single piece within my artwork. And this is the problem that I used to
Nice.
have before. I wasn't able to manipulate every single element.
But
So
you
now,
taught yourself that, and you watched the tutorials, and now you've there we go.
so you see, guys, go to Behance and go to YouTube and do their lives,
There we go.
because
See,
all of this knowledge is in there for us to learn and experiment.
See, lovely audience. You're getting gems right now from Diana. So there we go. She just said it there. She didn't know much about Photoshop, and I think that's the whole point. It's there is a lot of programs out there, and we're not professionals on every single one. And I think the key is if you're interested in it, definitely try and have a go at it. And who knows, that could be something that ends up being as a hobby or even an actual employment. So definitely have fun with it. And as Diana perfectly explained as well, definitely check out Adobe Live, because like we said, these ones definitely will help you to sharpen those skills. And obviously we have creative challenges too. So that's another thing to even get your teeth stuck into, and to try and test your design knowledge. But Diana, I want to ask you a question, which is design related ish, but I'm curious. Obviously, we've got a nice collection of fishes going on. Are you a fish person? I feel like it's silly not to ask you that question. Do you like fishes as an animal creature, or? we
I
would if you
do.
didn't now, but
I do like animals because of the
yeah,
colors and the patterns, and
sure.
I've been wanting to do fish for a long time, but fish are something that if you're
Mm,
thinking in terms of making like a three-dimensional sculpture, they are very small, so you don't want to oversize things too much so that
mm,
you can start adding the scales. And it's so much information. Like when I do my birds, as I showed you before, it's like a lot of feathers layered on top of each other.
yeah.
So fish, I feel there is so much um to find within
Mm.
fish because they are so colorful. I mean, they have the best designs. If you have, I
That's
don't
a
know if you
very
go
good
to an
point.
aquarium, but when you look at them, it's like, who created
Yes,
these things? Like
that's
they
a
are so
very good
cool.
point. You
Yeah.
actually made me realize I don't think I've been to an aquarium in years, but actually if I do go, no, not if, when I go, I'm gonna think of your stream, Diana, and think, do you remember that time when Diana said, check out the fins and check out the amazing patterns? Because that's a very good point. Like it's I mean, most obviously animals will have, some sort of fur or pattern and whatnot, but with fish in particular, like you said, there's so many different varieties. And it just almost sets it up for just creating some visuals, right? To design for around it. So very good shout indeed.
Yeah, so that's what I do. I went to the zoo with my son last week or two
Nice.
weeks ago. And I
Nice.
found, I felt like sometimes with the things that I create, it keeps the communication with him because he's learning and then he's teaching me. And most of the things that we create as artists, they have
Mm,
to do with our own experiences. So the things that we are into, the things that we're seeing, sometimes
very
it's really
true.
hard to say like what is that subject that I want to work on today and I have no
Mm,
idea. Sometimes you just have to look at the things that you like and stop fighting
mm,
so hard to create something too complicated. And like I'm very passionate about nature and I'm
mm,
trying to bring it in a modern way, trying to say like, nature is very cool and I'm going to do
mm.
it in
And
paper
it
because I
is.
have I have nothing else to do. So
I
and
love
then
that.
and then through that, I get to teach a message because maybe you go to the aquarium, which you shouldn't, but like if you go like to the open sea or you ever go like
Mm,
scuba diving or something, and then you see fish, you'll be like, you understand that what I
mm,
what I do with my work is I learn through making. And I think that's very important because as you're making something, you are finding, you are discovering, you are
mm,
analyzing, you are studying, then sometimes you have to read.
mm.
And that is what creates knowledge for me. And so I love doing that. I love.
That's no, that's awesome to hear. And I think you made a really good point about, when you're creating something, whether it, for a project or even if it's a side project, side hustle, it's creating with a mean sometimes as well. And especially when that feels personal or even rich relatable. Obviously, what you're creating now is for a good cause and it's to sort of share awareness. And I don't know, I personally think those projects are the ones that carry the most weight, right? Because you're in a way you're trying to create something as well which will influence people hope for the better as well. And I mean, good to know in the chat. What do you guys think on that topic? And are you even working on any projects that you feel like are community based or projects that you feel like are really close to home? Those are the ones potentially that have not even be client based. It could be client based, or it could just be ones you do for fun. But they're the ones that I feel like they keep you sane sometimes when you're perhaps in a full time employment or freelance or whatever, and you work on those sort of side projects that have a bit more bite to it, and has more meaningness to it. So let us know in the chat if you're working on any projects. We would, and if they're in fish related ones as well. I mean, that would be very particular if you got any fish related projects. But who knows? Who knows in this world? We may have some. So let us know in the chat. We would love to hear it.
But this is quite interesting that what you're saying because sometimes and I like to say this as my personal experience. I've never done work because I think it's something that is very popular at the moment and I'm going to get hired for that. So I've
Mm,
never done, and I try to not follow a trend with what I do. I try to stick with what I want to do. And
nice.
I try to focus on it for so long and do it for so long and so well that
Mm,
because it's so me and so different, it gets out. And like I start making birds, but there wasn't any purpose of people commercially going to buy birds as sculptures, and then you think like, no, nobody wants them. And
yeah.
sometimes you need to do things and show people what you know how to do for them
Mm,
to start thinking like, oh, look, that's really cool. Maybe we could use this for that. So, with my bird
very good
sculptures
point.
now, I'm doing two projects and that are for interior. One is in Madrid and one is in Oregon. and they are
Okay.
interior installations, and I have to do lots of birds for like installations of very luxury interiors. I didn't know that was a possibility, but I made them. And so I think this, maybe the fish don't have a purpose yet, but when I start showing them around, people will feel like, maybe we can use. Always someone needs what you're making. Always.
I love that. And it has that discussion. You mentioned it, it's communication. You have a discussion based on what you created. And actually, on that topic of what you're creating, and I know I touched on some really good gems, and Cody made a very good point, because we're watching you design and we're over talking, actually missing out on the steps you're doing, because they're so beautiful. What are you working on now? Obviously, I can see with the color. Would you let us let our audience know what you're kind of doing now with that gradient?
Yeah, so I'm trying to inform the gradient that I'm going to try to be replicating with the spray paint. So for me, all of this part is setting my head ready and trying to get familiar with what I will be doing when I start working by hand. So it's kind of like setting the instructions for what I'm going to follow. And also sometimes what happens to me, which is really, really funny, is that I get very, very adventurous with Illustrator, and I create all these gradients and things, and then I send these jobs to my clients, and they say, yeah, approve. And then I go to work, and I am like, I don't know how I'm going to make all these colors. Like, I don't know how.
You gave them dreams. You gave me dreams.
I dream too far, but then that is a really good challenge. It's like, okay, I'm going to make it work. How am I going to make it work? And then I start thinking, which material, which color. So it's nice to not think too much, because the process itself is in such an, it's very, very early stage in here. So it's evolving constantly. So you can see now I have like trying to get familiar with the color and start thinking, just picking up some elements. When we hit the hour, you let me know, and then I jump into the other parts, so that is not just so focused on this. But
no problem.
So yeah, it's really good for me. I was thinking the other day, when I do illustration or when I do my illustration work, I don't sketch in a notebook with pencil. To me, sketching is here. So I already
jump straight on.
Yes, and I was thinking, I don't know how beneficial that is, and I don't know if I'm doing myself, if I'm being, I'm always against, I'm always going backwards. So like I always start at the end and I start trying to unveil all the things at the beginning. But
sorry, no, I interrupt you. Sorry, no, go for it.
No, I was just going to say it's the way that it works for me. It doesn't work for me to sketch. Sometimes I do sketch something, but then I feel still too far from what I need. And it's better if I have it already in the computer, because then I can, I get the elements and everything that I'm going to go to cut. So it makes the process quicker for me.
No, I get that. And to be honest, I think you just said that it works for you. That's the key, right? I feel like, we've got a wide range of people who are tuning in today, whether it's students, grads, been in industry for years, or just people just curious about design as a whole. And everyone's going to have very much their own take on how a process should be, how a design process should be. And like you said, if it doesn't work for you in terms of pen and paper and drawing, that's totally cool, because you know what kind of works for you. I mean, from a personal thing, I mean, I have to live with pen and paper first, because my brain is a little bit perhaps very old school when it comes to having to just draw, and I even highlight as well, and then sometimes I scan them in. But again, that's what works for me. It depends on you. And it'd be great to know in the chat, what are you guys, what's your process? Are you more of a pen to paper first and then you scan it in, or are you just like, cool, I know what I'm doing, I'm going straight onto InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and designing? Let us know in the chat. Sharing is good, so we'd love to hear about it.
I've been trying to because I'm scared about drawing, and I guess I was googling the other day like why drawing scares me, and I guess it's because like these questions that you go to Google. Why? I mean, I went there.
Did it come up as a thing? Was that a question?
Yeah. But I went there because every time I write on my stories, I always write everything wrong, because obviously English is not my first language. So I am like, I just have to correct my sentences. And I was checking, and then it says it gives you anxiety because you are afraid of the imperfection that you deliver when you do a sketch. And I guess this is my fear, because you see like my studio, my work, my lines, everything is so perfect. And so when I have to sketch in paper, I feel like it just really, I don't know,
I get that. Yeah.
frightens me. So I've been doing now some, and I also feel it, and I think this is probably quite common. Is like, why should I draw? Why do I draw? You know, when I don't draw often, how do I get started drawing? What is the subject that I want to choose? So that's what I choose, kind of like things.
Okay.
The other day, I hear one of my friends, and he said that the way that he got drawing is he started to redraw things that he liked. So he would go on top of something that he liked, and then he would just draw that over and over again to understand it. And then when he had a sense of understanding and he was experiencing the drawing, he could move on to create his own things. So I felt that is a really cool tip, because if you don't know what to draw, at least you know what you like and you can draw things that you like.
That's a good point. I think, I mean, I've read a few blogs before where it's quite common where you may have designers or, illustrators, artists, graphic designers for across the whole spectrum, where it tends to come from childhood sometimes as well. And what I mean by that is that I've definitely read a few blogs where you have graphic designers, for example, where they've always been interested, say, for example, with cartoons. And that's always stemmed from drawing. And I know from a personal, I was obsessed, and I won't geek out too much, but I was obsessed with The Simpsons. So I'd always draw cartoons on school books, whatever. And I think there's elements of drawing for fun, not drawing for, say, a project or drawing for a client. And there's elements that perhaps still stay with you. And I think that's, some people embrace it and become even illustrators through that, or they just embrace it for fun. Who knows? But I think the key is, it's kind of, it's always nice kind of tap into the different mediums out there, because jumping on screen is awesome, but also you never know, drawing pen to paper first might help you too. So always good to try different things. But on that topic of different things, what are we working on? I can see you've it feels like a Jackson Pollock painting, but what's going on now with the visuals? They're looking good. They're looking very cool. What are we looking at?
What am I doing? I am so I am doing this part, and I'm trying to select the elements that I need, and I'm trying to, like exclude them so I can start bringing them here and coloring them, because I need every single piece on its own.
Nice.
And then I will do the lines and I will do the dots, and I think that's it. And then goodbye fish, and then we go to the next stage.
Sounds good. And don't worry, you already told me about the hour. I've got it locked in my my brain cell, so I promise you I won't forget. But I can see we've got some people in the audience that are coming in actually right now. So hopefully you caught that little part of what Diana's working on now. And if you have just joined us, a massive welcome. Thank you for joining us. And obviously right now you can see we have the lovely artist and designer, Diana, and she's creating some Postage collection stamps on Illustrator on the iPad, and we'll move on the Photoshop fairly shortly, and then take it from there. But again, any questions you've got from Diana, whether it's, why is it fish, designs, colors, or even her background as well, please do let us know, and I'll feed that directly to Diana while she's creating some awesome design work.
Yeah, let's get chatting if you want to ask anything.
I've got a question for you whilst you're designing that, actually. So with because I know I've done obviously a bit of checking on your Instagram and your Photoshop and your website, which is absolutely incredible. And I can see you've worked with some really interesting clients. Again, do you find, on that topic of maybe working with some clients or with challenges, what kind of challenges you tend to face within your sort of day-to-day work? Because again, it's nice to kind of share that with, for those perhaps in the chat who are very much even starting out and quite curious to maybe get into your industry. You've got any tips, but also challenges that you faced as a designer?
Yeah, every job is a challenge, I have to say, because it involves, I don't know, clients get very creative, and when they come to me particularly, they come with this idea that it hasn't been made yet, but let's see if she can do it. So they always think that, oh, maybe we should try this now. Maybe we should ask her if this is possible. And so I always say yes, because obviously, I like to work and I want a client and I want a good client. And then it's very, very challenging. Like last week, I was doing a pop-up invitation. And it was very, very, very challenging because I have never done one before. And, when you think about paper, any client that comes around has a different perception of paper, and some people
Mm.
specialize in installation, and some people specialize, for example, just in editorial pieces. But I kind of like to try everything and anything. So if I get a new job, I will never say no because it's not within my area. I always feel, yeah, let's take this challenge and see how further I can make it. But then also then you have, within like a very small period of time, you have to learn to do something that you have never done before, but that result of that learning needs to be perfect because it needs to serve your client. So the pressure is very, very high, and it's very, very intense, and it's almost like you're rushing, you know, against the clock all the time to see. And there are times where I feel like I want to give up, and I want to say to the client, like, no, I can't do this. But I always, you know, but I have never, I have never done that in my life. I always say, like, no, I'm going to push and push until until I get there. And I always get there with like sweat and tears, as they say. And what I find is that the things that I learn are beyond what I will have imagined I will have created on my own. So having clients, for me, it's very, very, very important because they have a vision of, you know, they are like a safe space for you to grow. So you're getting paid, you're trying a new skill, you're learning something that you otherwise wouldn't have learned if you have to do it on your own. And at the same time, they are guiding you through the process. They are letting you know, giving you the feedback. So they are shaping the work that you're making. And I find that experience is like the most rewarding for me. So I love the pain, the pain.
That's interesting. No, it's so refreshing to hear. And again, just from a different creator. I mean, that's the beauty of why we have, you know, Adobe Library. We have different creatives all over the world, different backgrounds. But your experience there of working with clients and kind of what you go through, it's really interesting. And hopefully, you know, even those in the chat can you know, take some inspiration from that. And it sounds like with everything that you do with project, it's the pro. I mean, the deliverables, of course, is important. The final deliverable, what you create, that's obviously what makes the client happy and a sign off. But it's that process, that journey that you create to get there, that is just as important. Because it feels like a learning curve. That's the vibe I get from what you're saying, Diana, that every project you do, you're learning throughout, and you can take those skills perhaps to the next client, and you keep on growing through that process.
Yeah, and many job. I mean, every job is interesting. Every job has helped me to grow to the next job.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's like because I have done this and I've shown people I've done that, in like a couple of months, I get hired for that now. And so it's like, you know, I rarely get a job where I have to do something that I did before. I don't have very much of those jobs because, you know, some people, the job is just to do kind of illustration and within the same rules. And it's just, you know, they get to actually focus on the graphic art and the artwork. But to me, it's very interesting. It's like my focus is not just on the artwork, but it's on the functionality and how I make it and the skill that I apply into making something. So I had to learn photography. I had to learn illustration. You know, I'm not graphic designer or illustrator or anything. I just had to learn to do this because I feel the more skills that you have within your, you know, your tools, the better service you can offer a client. And then you don't want, I mean, in my opinion, and this is what I do, I never want a client to go with somebody else. I want the client to stay with me because
collect them all like Pokemon.
not in that way, but you know, like
I'm kidding.
It's not that you fight for them, but it's difficult these days. The competition is big, and there is a lot of people working in similar things. So you obviously want to go to that extent in your career that you can say, look, I have the experience. Many people don't have this experience, so then this is why I want you to stay in here. And and like I'm really lucky because I can invest every day of my life learning. That's all I do. In every day I come to learn something new, and I get to enjoy it. And sometimes it's painful, but at the same time, like, you know, the last 2 years been very rewarding in terms of what I've seen my work and the opportunities that I'm getting. So it's really exciting to see that when you put a lot of effort and you put a lot of, you know, sacrificing what you do, you really get to see the, you know, the fruit.
And just on that as well, I think, you know, you made a good point about with even when you said about clients not wanting, you don't want clients to kind of go away to other you know, creatives as a whole. But I think as well, just adding on that, it's that client relationship, because I always feel as designers, right, whether you went to uni or not, or you're self-taught, it's something where having a skill is one thing, but the people skills, especially if you're freelance, that kind of feeds into it a lot. Because I don't know if you find it with clients, Diana, too, but and great to know in the chat what you guys think. But I always find that with clients, it's a bit of a guessing game sometimes with certain things that they want. Obviously, you have a brief, you try and narrow it down, but you're having to understand there's a bit of patience that comes into it. You know, people skills, being able to articulate exactly what you're trying to really get across from your side. And these are elements that not necessarily is design related. It's just more the people skills. And once you start to establish that good relationship with a client, I mean, that's the beauty of it, because they come back for more, right? And you can kind of establish a nice relationship and trust. I mean, that's something I always find with freelancers and with my own practice. That has to be the key, right? With trust, because both parties are content, they're both happy, and you can create some really nice, important work. So
And
yeah.
and with what you're saying is, it's really important with what you're saying, because you could be very good at what you do, but if you don't deliver in time, or if you don't have good communication with your client, all those bits are extra service that you're providing. So
Exactly.
the ultimate out, it's just like, we tend to think that what we do is just the illustration or the artwork. We do more than that. It's how efficient I am within the time they're giving me, how open I am to feedback, how do I take what the client is asking, how flexible I am, how much, I have projects that I actually had no time to sleep for a month. And who is going to take care of that? Who is going to just leave everything to just do this job? Some people might not want, some people, like my mom said to me, you tell your clients you work from 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday. And I say to her, good luck. Good luck with that.
Try to set the rules early on, so they know. Your mom's a smart lady. I love that.
Yeah.
And we're working.
Sorry, yeah. So like, if you want to get the job, you have to reach all that. It comes with like sacrifice and commitment.
I love that. I feel like when you have a client, just say, "Mum knows best." So yeah, mum set the terms early on. Add that in their contract, and they can't go wrong. So we're working, obviously now I can see you're working with is it the pencil tool you're working on now?
Yeah, so I'm now doing like because I've done the pieces, I've done my fins, and so now I'm doing like the detail in here.
Nice.
Which I think, for example, with this detail, when I see all of these circles, this is something. So you have two options with paper in details like this. You could you always have to think that everything that you do in Illustrator is going to become a layer that you're going to do in paper. Yeah. So I have the layer of the lips and I have the layer of the dots, but because the fish is not going to be much bigger than 20 centimeters, I have to make like these tiny dots. So what's the best solution for me? Do I want to glue them on top, or do I want to exclude them from the shape so that they give me shadow? So I can achieve this detail. So what I do in places like this is, I don't want to get too complicated, because gluing every single of these is a pain. So then I just I just remove them from my shape, and then I have let's see if it comes out, because probably I have more line in here. So
I have to say, Diana, that is a beautiful looking fish. Perhaps the most good looking thing I've ever seen, actually. It's those lips, right?
Yeah, you
it's
see,
a very pretty fish.
So this is what I mean. Then you have the cut out in here. So when I go and I put this one on top, this is how it's going to behave when I work making this in paper. Because, so I'm going to layer the eye on top, but this piece will have the cut out, and then the contrast from behind is going to give me the color of the dot. So this is how you start playing when you have the material. You start thinking about, if the detail is too small, it's not worth cutting it and gluing it. You don't want to do that. You want to add the small detail to the bigger piece so that it comes out of the bigger piece. And then you don't have to do, that work. Nice. Because I guess what you want to do also is save time. This is what I have found very very interesting with my work, is handmade things are taking me too long, and clients want me to create artwork that is quicker. So then you have to start thinking, how am I going to start advancing my skills, and that I have to invest less time doing the work, because now I don't have one client, I have 2, 3, 4 at the same time. So then I need to deliver to everyone. So then I start thinking, you know, like when I start making my beds before, I was very detailed and everything was just like detail over I am like, sorry, I don't have time to add details anymore. So I kind of like
You
to
missed
go.
the boat.
Yeah. So I still deliver quality, but I like to go a bit more, become, you know, making
More
a
streamlined.
yeah, exactly, and making a handmade process with that is more practical for me in the long run, so that I don't have to spend a lot of time doing it. So for example, I've done this piece, so I don't need this piece, so I'm trying to start cutting all of these pieces, and I guess I invest in the most time in this piece because to me the fish is like the main subject of my illustration. So it's the one that I want to have the most color and the most detail. And then when I go and work on my background, I'll just be like doing just very simple silhouettes in the back, and I just want to focus on the fish. So that's what I'm trying to anticipate and preparing here. So I do exactly the same. I go around. So for example, if I wanted to do the dots in one color and the light in another color, what I do here is that I create a background piece. And I don't care about this piece to be very beautiful. I don't need this piece to be, because this is going to be in the background, yeah? So then I color my piece in yellow because this is the color that I want. And so I have my piece in there, and then I come here and I say that I want to exclude all of these elements again. Yeah. And then I come down. So I only have the orange where I want to have the orange. And then I still use the purple that I had before for the other side of the work. So now if you see, we have 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, and that is just for the main body. So it's a lot of different little elements that I will have to start tidying around. But the working paper, I find that it's very rich and it's very attractive, and people still wow with what I do. So I think it's worth doing it.
Nice. It's nice to sort of see it feels like layers in a way. Well, pretty much is layers, isn't it? Just the overlapping. And also, Diana, I don't want to get in trouble. So I remember you saying to me to give you a heads up when it was the hour mark, in case you go into Photoshop. Is that right?
Yeah,
but by all means, you stay if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I think I'm in good time.
Good.
Maybe I like to finish this and then we just move and we just do the other part.
Of course, yeah.
Because the other part is just to do, because we said that we're doing postage this time, so I have to inform the audience about me doing the frame. But I think those bits I have them ready already. I just want to come and just place my fish.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So
I can see the fish joke. Of course, I mean I was waiting for fish jokes to come up in the chat. So Cody said fish lips, clever fish sticks. Yeah, I feel like there's probably, I mean, I'm gonna open the floodgates now by saying this, but there's probably a lot of fish jokes out there. Yeah, sorry, not to go off piece too much there. But definitely on piece. Cody asked you, Diane, question: what kind of paper do you tend to work with your paper craft of the work that you make?
So I do use there are 3 types of brands that I like. One is called Canson, Daleroni, or Fabriano, and those are papers made for pastels. So people will use them to draw with pastels. What I like about this, and I've noticed many people that do paper sculpture, collages use them, is because they have the perfect weight. So you know when you're working with paper, you have like all the range. So imagine that you could use even tissue paper. And you could also use A4, sheets that you use to draw. Any paper has the potential. If you start affecting it, you can paint it with acrylic and then you can make it thicker. But then the one that works the best for me for my, because I use a cutting plotter where I put my pages and then it's like a printer with a blade. So I just get all of these elements out. I do 160 grams is the best. And also, before I start using spray paint, is the best paper that holds the color, because that's another thing. Like if you're working, sometimes you're just working doing an illustration and then that's it, and then you don't need to send that to anyone or do anything with that. But in my case, I get a lot of clients that I need to send the pieces physically. So I need to offer a sort of a quality to the material, and you don't want the paper to be fading when it touches the light. So then you need to start thinking what is the best material that I can use. Because imagine if you do a sculpture that is very expensive and then people just put them outside and then it fades. Then
Yeah,
that's
that's not
embarrassing.
ideal. Not
Yeah.
ideal.
So the Canson, because it's a fine art paper and
Mm.
it's acid free, is good. But nowadays when I do illustration, I don't need to send it to anyone. I just get to keep it to myself. So I just use,
Nice.
yeah, it's good. I just have to send the photo and then that's it.
Nice.
So I
I'm very
use,
impressed with your hand control there. I'm watching you do them as oh, well, I'm watching you. We're all watching you, of course, but I can see how perfectly controlled your your hand movement is. That's perhaps years of design artwork. It looks
you
great to
think so?
see.
Do you notice that actually?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's pretty. Are you using a tablet right now? Are
Yeah,
you using
yeah,
the mouse?
I'm doing it in the
Yeah.
iPad. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so yeah, of course there's the pen. I mean I guess a pen you have a bit more control than the mouse, but yeah, for my eyes it looks pretty straight. Perhaps I'm just I don't know, wonky with my hands, but it looks good to us. It looks
Well,
very good.
I do like I do enjoy this a lot doing the
Mm,
doing the illustrations now, and I also want to get better at doing them. I want to be able to. I mean, I don't think this is funny. Like, would I ever get hired to do digital illustration? I don't
yeah.
think. I don't know. I think that I am very specific with what I do, but you know, learning all of these skills is really important because this really takes, like when I study fine art, this wasn't in the schedule for me to do. I never
Mm,
thought I would be doing like pieces like this. And now sometimes it's hard for you to control, you know, you just have to let
mm,
yourself go and see where you find yourself at. And it's not, I was reading something about like feeling like you are an imposter because you know this is imposter syndrome, and then
mm,
if you don't belong to this category, that you tend to feel that you are less because you didn't
mm,
you need to study that, and then you feel like, oh, you're not officially like an illustrator. But I think something beautiful that I read is you don't need to feel like an imposter, you just need to feel like you are learning a new
mm,
skill. And I think everyone is entitled to learn a new skill, and within that you could actually become really good because maybe
for
you know
sure.
you didn't try it before. So I want to
Mm,
explore this in the way that I enjoy it, in the way
mm.
that it really serves my work, and just become better at it, because anything that I learn these days is going to be very beneficial for what I do in the future. So
Nice. And I mean, just on that, what you said about the imposter syndrome, that's I feel like that's a topic that does come up quite a lot when we do Adobe Lives, and it's I mean it's a natural feeling. I feel like it's one of those ones where I don't know if you ever found it, but when I was a student, maybe even going like as a grad, and you see creators out there who are established, doing amazing stuff, doing amazing work, and you kind of assume that it was absolutely smooth sailing for them, and think, well, surely they don't get imposter syndrome because they've already kind of made it, but I feel like it's that reminder that it's a perfectly natural, it's human. It's a human feeling to have. And actually, even getting nervous with projects as well or with clients, I always feel, being nervous is a good thing because it means you want to do well. So I think that's for me, it's when you're not nervous, perhaps the complacency kind of sets in. So for anyone perhaps is, if you're starting out or you're quite new or if you're a student, hopefully the stuff that we're saying now, it kind of helps you guys to kind of do your own thing and to have a bit more confidence in what you're working
yeah,
on.
like don't, you know, I don't think that if you don't belong to an institution or you haven't followed the process, like, you know,
Mm,
in certain ways, that doesn't mean that you can't. I think that you are, you know, we are all entitled to do, and
100%.
some people find things that way. You know, some people are very good at what they do and they actually don't need
Mm,
that education or they don't need to go through. So yeah, it's a tricky one, especially when you're a
mm,
creative, I guess, because there is a lot of pressure, there is a lot of people, there is a lot of judgment, who is the best, you know, doing
mm.
what you do. But just, you know, enjoy the process, I think, to me is the most important.
Definitely. And just that the tool you were just because again it's for those that perhaps are quite new to the program that you're working on now, you did a where you kind of group them all together then. I think there's a few like maybe two steps. I don't want to obviously interrupt the flow because it's flowing well, but you did a what was it before where you kind of grouped them all together because you had them as individual
Yeah,
and now they're
so
kind of
I
selling perhaps for
I
anyone watching.
what I did all the line work in here, and now I exclude it from the main piece, and I have this piece, and this
Nice.
is this will be the main piece. So this is how I'm going to get the color. Because when you're working, I guess when you're doing an illustration, you don't have to worry about. I mean, you do have to worry about where you put your colors and how you layer your pieces. But I think that when you're working with paper, everything needs to be very organized and very efficient. I think that that's the best word for it. So how I don't want to have to lay too many pieces. I don't want to have to add too much work. So if I resume it, so this is what I was doing in here. Instead of me having to glue every single one of them, I just create a piece that is sufficient, that has them all. And then now I replace it. So that's it. And now what I work with is just the difference of color behind to just create the difference of color that I was doing in this. So I think I'm almost ready. I have to do this thing, and then we just move into putting this together. But
very cool. And we're about just that, you know, we're just over an hour now into the stream. And if you have just tuned in, I should say, again, massive welcome if you're tuning perhaps on the YouTube or Behance. You're in a good place to be inspired. So welcome. And today we have artist and designer Diana Herrera, and she's designing a postage stamp collection. And right now we're using the iPad to create, you know, some visuals on the graphics of a nice pan of a fish. So so you've come as a good stage, and we're going to, I think, pop into Photoshop shortly as well. So definitely get those questions in the chat, and I will share them with Diana. And actually, there's a few questions, Diana, that's popped up. Well, it's actually a joke, a fish joke. I did open the floodgates when I said about the fish jokes, and I'll be criminal to say this one. It was a good one, Ryan. Diana, what do you call it? I mean, if you don't laugh, now it's even more awkward. What do you call a discounted sushi?
I don't know.
a raw deal. I mean, those jokes work on me because I'm very easy to make laugh. Good on Ryan. But also, on a serious note, question from Ryan. What are your favorite colors to work with, Diana? And do they coincide with your favorite colors in general?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't tend to work with dark colors. I don't tend to use any blacks or browns. I think I like very bright colors. So cool. whenever I'm looking for piece to work on, I'm always looking for, it seems like purples. I also play with my Instagram, and I go with like scales of color. So I have sometimes like I have weeks of using just purples and pinks, and then sometimes I have weeks of using blues. So I think I use pretty much all the colors, but I will say that I avoid anything that is black. I don't use black much in my work. And red, I find red is a very difficult color to combine. And I don't know if people agree with that. But to me, red is it's a very strong color. And so if I have to choose red, I maybe just put it a little bit towards kind of, you know, fuchsia or purple, but I wouldn't go with red directly. I find red is a color I cannot stand. So I had like a thing that I did for the studio, and it was red, and I had to spray paint that. I hate red.
I can sense the energy of how much you dislike this. I mean, everyone's got a color. I mean, does that work with, say, tints of colors? Like, do you have like, say, different shades of red, or is it just red? The Costa spectrum is just not your thing.
So if I have like, I guess this is the basic, which is the cadmium red. And if I have to spray that, I will use pink to add like a little shade, like to just balance it a bit. So I wouldn't just like a plain red. I will either use like a pink or like an orange. I always try to, you know, bring it down somewhere. So yeah, pink is definitely not my favorite color.
Diana, guess what my favorite colors are, Diana? My two favorite colors, red and black. I'm just joking. I mean, that would be very particular. Each to their own though. I mean, everyone's, yeah. I mean, for me, that's an interesting point, because actually I do find as designers of freelancers, or even, you know, full-time, when you have an opportunity to work on a project where you can use stuff that you like, whether it's a particular typeface you like, particular color you like, we'll try and put it in there, right? I mean, I'm definitely a sucker for adding some greens and blues, especially in an editorial space that I work with. So covers, obviously, if it feels like it's on brand and there's a rationale behind it, but if I can slip in a blue or green or two, I will.
Do you get given like a strict rules about which colors you can use when you're working? or up to
That
you?
depends on the client. I think, I mean, usually well, I work in publishing quite a lot. So there's not necessarily a brand guideline. It's more like a brief what you want to work on. And you have a bit of, they're quite open with the clients I work with to seeing different concepts. And to be fair, I want to say it's cheeky on my part, but what I always tend to do is I will very much do obviously what they require, of course. And if there's certain things that's a tick list in terms of what needs to be on it, I will. But I'll also add in almost like a what's the word I call it? Like not like a mystery one, but just ones that's a little bit off piece, but still very much, still in brand, but a bit off piece because I think when people or clients, I say in particular, see something that perhaps goes a little bit against the grain of what they imagined, it opens another door and perhaps in their mind of thinking, oh, actually, we didn't think of it in that way. And sometimes that opens the door to maybe even merging what they imagined with what I potentially would like it to be. So for me, that's kind of the balancing act. And that's comes, I think, with more time, with the more clients you have and, people skills as well. Because I want to just go in there all guns blazing and say, oh, there we go. That's a design that I like, but it's nothing to do with what you like. It's more trying to show options and potentially, hopefully, one of them works. But it'd be great to know, in the chat, like what's your process? Do you have like a system where you work with clients? Do you have any stories with clients you worked with? We love to hear. Obviously, Maps not say the name because don't want to get in trouble here. But here's the stories. It'd be great to kind of hear everyone's experiences on that. Please do let us know.
Yeah, once I had to make a book cover, and the brief it has to be blue, like royal blue with red and yellow. And I hate it.
The red, the R word. I know you hate that one. How did you
Yeah,
go about that one? How did that project pan out?
well, I delivered the project,
Mm.
and then I live with that image forever in my portfolio. And at one day, I just, I started learning how to use Photoshop, and I was like, I'm going to change the colors because I don't feel this color represent me anymore. And I did a
Okay.
very good swatch to purples and greens, and I was really happy about that. So
Mm.
I guess this is the only time that I had to use colors that I didn't like at all. And I found
Mm.
it very frustrating because I show a lot of options to it was a book cover, and I showed
Okay.
different color swatches of things that I would like, and they say no, it needs to be red and blue, which I think it's just,
Just the red. Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't feel drawn to buy a book that
Yeah.
has those colors in the cover. It's something more like,
Yeah, so
yeah.
sometimes the client they know what they want. It's you can I've always heard that saying that my grandpa always said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So sometimes you find that it's I like to think as designers, we have the skills and of course we have the knowledge as well of what we're doing. And sometimes we touched on before, it's the trust element, especially if it's perhaps a new client. Sometimes it might be a bit reluctant to perhaps I want to say trust in the first go, but they don't know what to expect. So sometimes they kind of go in there thinking they know what they want exactly. This is how it looks. And I've always said, and when I give talks, I've always thought that challenging a client is so important. I don't know how you when you deal with that space, Diana, but like challenging it's something that needs to be tactful, but also quite important, right? Because you both want to get to the best deliverable. Do you have any experiences with potentially challenging clients that you've worked with or even working with now?
Yes, I do. I do sometimes. I mean, I try to be practical, and I try to be give from the professional point of view of what I
Mm.
think something is more beneficial. But sometimes I build up if I really don't want to do something that they're asking because I think it's just I don't want to do it. And I guess that when you have the experience about what do you do, you can guide them through the process, and
Mm.
sometimes they want more of what you're doing, and you feel like maybe I don't want to do that extra work. So I always feel that I try to persuade them in a way, and some of the time I am quite successful at at getting my way around
Nice.
with what I want, so that at the end it feels that it's not just a job, but it's something that I also enjoy. And I think it's important
Mm.
that we feel that yeah, it's an enjoyable
Mm.
experience as well.
And you feel
Okay.
proud, right, as well, of what you create. I think that's we, as designers, you might get those and again, it's always great to hear what you guys in the chat think, but you get those projects where hopefully it's not always like this, but you kind of, whether it pays really well or you kind of get it through the door, boom. But then sometimes you get those projects that they mean a lot. And also as designers, we want to create something that, that has a meaning to it as well. So, and you can be proud of it as well. I always find that when you create something I do it with the intent of wanting to have it in portfolio or website, or if we're allowed to share on social media, and to share because you're proud of what you've done. You spent time working on it, so it shouldn't just feel like a microwavable meal. Basically, it should feel like a nice cooked meal. I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
dinner now on that topic, but yeah, there we
Yeah,
go.
that it doesn't feel that it's just, another job that you did, and that's a job. Because when you're
Mm,
creative and when you put in your creativity and your art in it, you also hold it. It's kind of, I always say it's kind of like my baby. I did it, and I want to be able to
mm,
show it, and I want to be able to feel proud of it. And sometimes it's good that some clients are very, very amazing to the allowance that they give you when you're working with them. They truly
mm,
trust you. And I find that recently, especially with my work, like some people come and they say, "Oh, we just want your opinion because you're very professional." And sometimes I feel, "Oh, this is scary because these clients now are coming for like to get advice from me." But
uh,
then it's really nice to
mm,
be able to be in that stage where you can actually contribute to the decisions that they
mm.
yeah, they are making for the projects that you're working on. So
That's a
I think
very nice point. We got a great question here from Ryan, who said, "Do you have a method to selecting color or experimenting with color? Since you work with paper, do you use a Pantone book?" It's a great question.
I don't use it. No. So the thing with the color is that it changes a lot within the artwork. And you're going to see that when I show tomorrow when we do things in Photoshop. So you see like what I finish in here is like the first information of what I'm going to be doing, and maybe I'm going to see if I can source the same colors in the reference that I have. If I don't have that color, I try to aim for something very close to. Sometimes
Mm,
color change when I'm working. Sometimes I did all these really strict rules in Illustrator, and then when I go to work, I feel like it's not working and I need to change the whole thing. But then recently I found that when I jump into Photoshop, the outcome from digital illustration to paper illustration is so different
mm,
that sometimes even if you aim for the same colors and you did it exactly in the same way, it doesn't deliver what you want. And when you look at
good
that
point.
image for so many hours in the computer and you feel like there's something off here, do you have the feeling inside yourself
Of
and you feel that
course,
feeling?
yeah, yeah.
And then this is what I love Photoshop so much, because I can just pick every single element and then just go all the color scale and then just start playing with everything again and seeing
Nice.
if maybe I did it all in pinks and purples and end up being all blues and greens at the end. And I can only
Nice.
do that because I can manipulate colors in Photoshop. So I'm not
Mm,
that bothered about the use of color anymore as a physical element. I just
mm,
think that as long as I can put some color while I'm producing the work, and then I've always changed my mind. This is
mm.
what is quite difficult when you are I guess that when you are creating a work that it has so many stages in the making,
Yeah.
is that you're
Mm,
always changing your mind. And
mm,
they've been clients that um I have to send them the sketch and that's it. And it has
mm,
to be perfectly accurate like the sketch. And
mm.
it's so difficult, because I already did it in the sketch. I don't want to have to do this again and again and again.
Yeah, no, I get
So
that. I get that.
yeah, so it's like
Mm,
doing the same illustration 3 times. You don't
mm.
enjoy that anymore. Like in the stage where you're making it, you feel like, what if maybe I just change the color? And then maybe
It's
you go to
robotic.
Photoshop and then you are like, maybe I just change a little. You just need to feel that you're finding something new, because if you just replicate in the same, you lose the purpose of it in halfway.
Mm. No, that's a good point, and that's a great question, Ryan. Definitely keep those questions coming. I mean, even from your side, if I don't know if you're a creative or if you're a designer, let us know if you tend to how you tend to experiment with colors. Because again, it's a very subjective thing, right? Working with colors, but I always find as well. I mean, within my line of work, it's very much print, editorial, magazines. With how you have colors, say on screen, to how you print it, obviously depends on the paper stock as well, and the print stock, but obviously how ink soaks into the print. But I always find that it is a case of trial and error and having to always test, because as much as it might look amazing on screen, you just never know if it looks slightly off, depending on how you're printing it, depending on who the printers are as well. So yeah, always keep trying and get some, always get proofs. Always get a proof
If
you
you
can from the printers. So
So
important.
if you notice that, that's a really interesting point, because if you notice that when you're working on a digital piece and then you print that in paper, imagine how would you feel if after you lose a lot of the qualities of the color once you print it. Imagine if you have to photograph and digitalize that print. The color that you started with digitally is so far away from the color that you're receiving on the last digitalization of the piece. And this is what happens with my work. Like I choose the colors in here, then I go and print the colors, then I have to photograph the colors, and so it's just it's crazy. But I'm not upset about that, because I think it really shapes the piece with every single stage, and it will be just boring to see that I can do a perfect translation of an illustration without finding anything in the process. I think that would be really cool. I think what's beautiful is that in every stage you're discovering. So I will show you tomorrow towards the end. When I was doing the piece of the fish, I had a different illustration, and I did the whole of this illustration, and I cut it out and I photographed it, and I tried to arrange it based on the initial illustration that I had, and it did not work. It doesn't matter how much work I put into it. I tried to replicate that illustration and it didn't work. At the end, when I changed things in Photoshop and I rearranged the pieces, I came to the right illustration. So then I came and I fixed the digital illustration. So it's like I had to go all the way away to be able to come back to understand that this simple image needed a lot of work to do. And I had to go out and in and out and in several times. So what
doing like a little dance, Diana, basically, just to get to the final project. It's like a little jig throughout the whole journey, right?
It's crazy, because like I can show you how the illustration looked before this, but this is what I will be working in paper. So this is the one that I will be showing tomorrow in paper.
Nice.
And tomorrow when we come to Photoshop, I will show you the behind, the one that I worked with initially and the one that came as a result. So that's what I say. All of these ones to me are just sketches, or how you call them, like a little starting point of an idea that I'm going to develop in paper. For example, this one, I was drawing it today and I was thinking, this is very complicated because of the small amounts of details that I have. And sometimes these are overlaying a big piece that I have in. So what is the best way to do this? And, I have lines. And for example, these lines, I've never been able to do them in paper perfectly. But when I was in Photoshop last week, I realized I can actually start mixing PNGs from Illustrator and put them in the back of my Photoshop work and bring the quality of the paper. So the result that I had with that image is like, it's the feel of paper, but much, much more digital, and something that I have never done before. And the result was so clean at the end that I was really excited to see how, even though I was thinking, I don't even have to cut things anymore. What I can do is just create the colors, photograph the colors or scan them, and then just start to mask everything together and then layer it up to create a piece. But I can do that successfully with my piece in Photoshop because I have a good knowledge of the layering and the lights and shadows in real life, because I've been doing that for years. So if I come to start adding shadows and things, I know where the shadow goes, how deep it goes, what's the color of that shadow. And I think that's really beautiful in the process. Is like, now actually I really want to try to do all of this in the computer without having to do any effort cutting them out and layering them together. But yeah, so this is what I chose for my collection. So I also chose the ones from the UK, and then as a fun fact, the UK is the only country that doesn't have the name of the country in the stamp. And this is because
did not know that. There we go. Fun fact.
Yeah, so this is so if you always you see like USA, you see like all of like the ones that I was doing in here. And that is because the stamps were created in the UK. So the only sign you see, like you always see like Israel, and you see all of the different names, but the ones in the UK, they just have the Queen. Because this is the country where the stamps were created, and they decided that they will never put the country, but that their symbol would just hold accountant for the ones that come from the UK or the Commonwealth. So then you know that those are the ones from
Yeah.
from which I think it makes quite beautiful, because then you don't have a lot of fonts or different text or things to fight around within your illustration, but it's actually just a really nice kind of like a little poster with the numerology and the element.
Nice. We've got it's quite a lovely experience actually, touching on postage stamps. Who got a person in the chat who's actually done a project on postage stamps, which is great to hear. So we've got Elizabeth who said, I actually made a postage stamp for a class of mine under a mentor who works in the industry of postage stamps. Definitely one of my favorite projects. That sounds awesome. You gotta share that with the world. Put it on the Behance if you could. That sounds awesome. And we've got a question for you as well, Diana, from Elizabeth, who said, do you have any other postage stamp creator, say friends or inspirations?
So if I know someone that works with postage stamps?
Yes. So she said, do you have any other postage stamp creator friends or inspiration? So perhaps, I hope I'm saying this right, but your inspiration, which I think we touched on at the beginning with Pinterest, but
yes, yes.
yeah, it's kind of in that space, right?
Yes, I did have this a graphic designer, and he designed the Mexico 68 postage stamps, but I don't have his name right now. I think it escapes my name.
It's okay.
And he did a lot of these very interesting designs for, I think, the Tube, and a lot of these Olympics, and very visually strong imagery and graphic design in the 60s and 70s. So when I was thinking about postage and stamps, I was looking at him. And then I found also on Decent, this blog called Decent, there were like these very new articles about postage stamps, like the ones that I showed you from the Netherlands when we started. I found they created ones that are really funny, like because postage stamps, they always used to be like a square. And these ones are different animals that when you post them in your envelope, they look like they are hanging from the edge.
Love
The
that.
first
Yeah,
time I
that's
see
awesome.
how they have broken the squareness on the postage stamp, and they have actually come up with a different shape. And they say they made those for kids to use so that they will be more playful, and then they will feel like they really want to stick them on.
That's cool.
Yeah, apart from that, next year I have an exhibition in Singapore. And I did an exhibition like in Indonesia some years ago about postage stamps. And so they want me to create some postage stamps in paper as a way to open up the content of the stamp and make them in real, in 3D, as a way for
That's
kids to
awesome.
experiment.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that'd be
I
very cool.
created 12 different stamps of the local natural, fauna and flora of Singapore. And then next year the exhibition is opening. Because the museum is the Philatelic Museum, but it's turning into the new Children's Museum. So they wanted to do like a connection between the stamps and the artworks of what they want to teach kids. So then we use the subject of nature as a way to teach them about what's local. But
and when is that in Singapore? When is that? So again, for anyone potentially who's even from Singapore in the chat, they might want to find out when is that, or they'll know more information potentially maybe on your social media in terms of like when that's going to be about.
Yeah, that is next. I mean, I think that starts this year in December, and then it lasts for 2 years. Nice. So I will be going to Singapore in June, and I will be doing some workshops and just talks and things about the work that I did with children, which I think
sounds awesome.
Very cool. I think
that sounds
that's
awesome.
That's one of the things that I miss since the COVID, to not being able to travel much, because I used to do a lot of different trips with my work. So now everything is more digital, but I would love to design postage stamps actually. Like I think that's what my ambition with doing this type of work is. That maybe
well, who knows? We might get you on another stream, and then you might be doing like as an official postage stamp designer, and then we've seen the process happen from your first stream to the next one. I love that. Which is actually interesting because I feel like postage stamps, they don't perhaps get much love. Because it's, to be fair, I mean, I'll be lying to you if I said that I don't really pay much attention, but mainly because the idea of sending a letter. I mean, it's only recently one of my closest friends and I, we decided to do postcards. Whenever we travel somewhere, we just do one postcard to each other, and we just now have like a postcard war in a nice way, of course, if that's a thing. So, but in terms of actually, I know people obviously collect stamps as a thing. And again, in the chat, if you're a stamp collector, please let us know. But obviously, people spend time designing stamps and creating it, and perhaps it's one of those kind of forgotten designs because it's so in the back. We're just so used to it. But yeah, it's a
have
cool
you
thing.
not have you not like I do receive a lot of mail from different countries, especially when I do like all these projects, and the first thing that I look when I get the envelope is like, oh, it's a stamp, and I want to
Is
see
that the
if it's
first thing?
yeah, definitely.
Nice.
It's like if I,
Yeah.
like I want stamp in my envelope. I don't want anything else but a stamp.
There's
And
me looking inside the envelope, but you're looking for you're looking at
no,
the
no,
other.
no. Like the first thing
Forget
is
the
like
inside.
I love how, I love how letters are, how we have, designed that communication setting of the letter and the how you call it, hierarchies of the elements that go within the letter. So you have the name in the middle and the stamp goes in the corner, and then you have all the stickers and the stamps and things around. I love that, that configuration of the letter. So when I receive an envelope or one, I'm always really drawn into. Also, because when I start collecting stamps when I live in Colombia, and the reason why I did that is because I felt they were like little windows of the world. You always
That's
get to
cool.
see
Yeah, I
like
get
a
that.
little landscape of a
Yeah.
different place that you have never been. So you can see, and this is what's beautiful, is like countries choose very important themes within the country, either the nature, important events, architecture, and you always get to see those. And there are several ones that are very interesting, like the graphic design put into design and postage stamps is beautiful, especially like the Russian ones from the Olympics in the 70s.
Yes, when they
They were
specifically.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so when I am always looking for inspiration or like colors or different elements, I always look at my collection of postage stamps because I find
Ah,
it's there. And
nice.
nobody looks at them because they are looking at
Well, do you
Instagram.
know what I feel like now, Diana? Now that you've been like an advocate now for stamps, and I feel like hopefully, if this stream has taught anyone anything, it's to spend more time, digesting our beautiful stamp collections in the world. It's great to kind of hear, yeah, your thoughts on that. And we've got Cody who made a really good point actually about what are we working on. Is it more like the edges now? We're kind of focusing on the
Yeah.
frames.
So
Yeah.
I'm creating. So obviously the frame you made the frame as circular, but
Yeah.
because this is obviously if it goes in a production line, then the circles are going to be able to rip every single stamp from the other. But then also I use it as like a decorative element to just kind of inform that. I find the frame is, in itself is very beautiful. Because this is so very recognizable, like you really need the dots to understand that it's a postage stamp is not the same if you just have a simple square, but at the same time the dots are functional because it's what allows you to rip one from the other.
Exactly.
So it's
Bit of method
interesting
behind the
how
madness.
how a functionality has given such a characteristic shape and almost like an ornamental, little edge silhouette.
I feel like I'm being educated. Well, not just myself, hopefully in the chat, we're being educated on the dynamics behind. Honest to God, like I feel like I'm gonna definitely be more aware. I just want to collect some beautiful postage stamps created, designed by you, Diana, because honestly, your design skills on the postage stamps are pretty cool. And we've got Izzy who said, and this is a really good point as well. Actually, she's noticed that a lot of countries choose important celebrations on their stamps. So yeah, you kind of touched on that before with the Olympics, Diana, and yeah, that's always cool when I mean, that's perhaps when people, or even well, I know I'm doing myself. I take more notice to stamps when it's perhaps for a celebratory an event of some sort. But yeah, I think even traveling abroad and seeing other stamps from other countries, that's perhaps a cool thing to be more interested in, or I think I'd find quite interesting. Yeah, let us know in the chat if you're digging your postcards from where you're from.
I mean, like I also like to look at banknotes. I don't know if
Oh, okay. Yeah.
whenever you travel and you go to another country, like my husband and I,
Interesting.
we love to collect postage stamps, and we love
Yeah.
to look at banknotes and coins
I
because they
get, yeah,
always
coins.
have, like, have you never, like, especially in the UK, like coins are such a proud thing and the notes and everything. And then
Yeah.
you have like this big graphic designer that is huge, and then he is commissioned to design the new £1 coin. And such a small space, and design needs to be so effective to fit all of the information that you want within that space. But I feel it's so, I don't know, it's kind of very futuristic because it's got all these lines. It's the same with passports. I don't know if you've seen like the illustrations of your
Yes, that's a
passport.
very good point you mentioned. Yeah, recently we
Yeah,
took more attention to that actually, my wife and I. Yeah, that's a very good point. Especially like those pages where you almost forget the separate, the pages that were in the passport where they're forgotten, right? Because obviously you just go to the main photograph and then everything else. But actually, there's so much design work on those kind of governmental on those documents. And we've got Oliver in the chat. He's again, everyone's loving your designs, Diana. I can see it's all positive positive vibes in her. And Oliver said, "Can we get these designs submitted to Royal Mail somehow?" I mean, I would personally buy a nice collection.
please.
There we go. Let's start a revolution and just get these sent to Royal Mail so we can do it. But I would
I guess
say just as a sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
no, I was just going to say, I guess that's the whole point of doing something is like using the platform to do something and get it seen by people. And also because this is such new part of my practice, it's also nice to be able to show a new audience where my work is drifting to and get the feedback on what I am doing, because sometimes you're very scared at trying new things and you feel like, this is not my area. Should I really try to conquer this area? And the feedback is so important because this is how I started, just because people gave me feedback in what I was doing and I was like, okay, they like it, then I might just well carry on. So to everyone that has said that, I'm really happy. And yeah, I think it gives me, encourages me to pursue this for the
Well,
more.
I remember when we had our little catch up. You were quite nervous before coming on, but this is very much a place of learning, a safe space. Obviously, it's a bit daunting because you're live on Adobe, but by all means, it's very much everyone's here to encourage, but also to be inspired. And I get the vibes totally. Everyone's been loving your designs. And just on that, just so we're very good with timing as well, I'd say we've got about 11 minutes, 11.6, 11 minutes or so. And then we'll have a nice little recap, just as a heads
Good.
up.
So
yeah.
maybe at this stage we should, because tomorrow I'm going to focus on Photoshop. So I kind of show you a little bit of how I was going to do my piece. So I'm just going to jump in the computer now, and I'm going to show you what is the process of taking all of these apart to get them cut.
Nice.
Yeah? So this is what I was telling you about. This is the initial illustration that I was working with. And
zoom in a little bit, because I just so we can all marvel at those, because those designs, perhaps in my eyes being really rubbish, but
yeah. So and this is where I stay now. So I just want to put these two together so that we can see. Sometimes, because I felt if it's going to be a small digital image, I mean, I'm pretending that I am actually designing a stamp. I'm not pretending that this is, I guess that sometimes when you are designing, you should really pretend that you were given the job and that you're actually doing it. Because then that means that you can do the job fully to the whole potential. And if someone comes to find it, then it's fully developed and it's not just in an early stage. Yeah. So this is where I was at with my initial design. And then I always do this blueprint, which I have it in here. I don't know if you can focus on my camera now. So when the blueprint is very important for me because it kind of determines the size that I am going to be working. And sometimes I go several times to get to the size that will be the best for me to do the work. Because of the small amount of detail that I have in the fish in here. So I have to think it needs to be quite big so that I don't have a lot of complications when I am creating the process. So I always use these ones to lay down all the work that I have done. So when I cut everything, actually I have everything done. I have the framing here.
I love that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so then you see on the first stage, I use my blue line work. I obviously don't want to spend a lot of ink printing, so I always just print in a line, a line and
cost effective. We appreciate that.
But good for the planet too. All those ultimately are my sketches that I keep as my research, so the more time that I have been working with paper, the huge collection of sketches that I have of all the pieces that I have done, so I can always come back to them in terms of size or everything that it worked. And I feel that because my process is handmade, it's really important to keep an archive of every single thing that I do, because sometimes like in a couple of years time someone will commission something similar, and then I will be able to come back to what I did and examine it physically. I'm not very good at coming back to the computer and trying to find that file. It's impossible because I have many hundreds of files, but I always know the folder where I have the sketch.
Nice.
So
you got a system in place. I love that.
yeah, I got my system. So here I have all my pieces from my sketch, which is the one that I was working in here. And then this is all ready to go to my cutting machine. So I start taking every single thing apart. I even made a reel out of me putting this fish. So I don't know if we have time, and then I can find it and show
I would say we perhaps, I mean, it's very precise. I'm going to say, I noticed Anika picked up on the 11.6 minutes. I'll say maybe about 3.2 minutes. I'm just saying numbers now. And then perhaps we'll have like maybe a nice little recap from this morning. I am living in the past. By this evening, depending on where you're viewing from. We'll do like a nice little recap for like a few minutes. Perhaps, and then we'll shut up shop until tomorrow. But yeah, by all means, you can finish what you're doing, and then we'll do like a nice little 2-3 minute recap at the end.
Look, I think let's see. I might have because I decided that it was really important to have a video of me cutting it all and putting it together. But maybe if I don't have it right now, I will put it up tomorrow morning and when the session comes. And then that's the first thing that we put. So yeah, so I have here all the pieces. So you can see I just put my fish apart. And so I have all of the elements divided by color and by size. So what I do is I start grouping them by color, and then I send all the purples and all the blues and all the greens. So I do like lots of because when you were cutting in paper, you're using a paper that is already like the base, for example, let's use this reference. I have like black, so I need to put all the black pieces and then all the cream pieces. And so I need to organize my kind of workflow in relation to that. And then I start painting and replicating all of these colors. So tomorrow I'll show the video when we start the session, so that people actually get to understand what is the handmade process that goes through it. And then we jump into Photoshop, and then we just start putting it all together.
Well, I mean, I feel like for you guys watching, whether it's YouTube or Hans, if you got more incentives to come back, that is definitely an incentive to come back for you tomorrow. But just on that note, perhaps do maybe like a nice little recap for say 2-3 minutes of what we worked on at the very beginning, from say the iPad right up until now, so that we're ready for tomorrow to jump in, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah. So I told you that I wanted to do some postage stamps, and I wanted to do like a little campaign to protect, create awareness about the environment. So I created these sets of stamps about different subjects that are very close to my heart. And I started developing my ideas on Illustrator in the iPad, and that means that I was drawing all my elements and starting getting all my vectors that will become silhouettes that I will be cutting in paper to start painting by hand, layering all together, become physical elements. And then tomorrow I will come to put all this image together in Photoshop with the help of Photoshop.
Nice. And I mean, it's great to sort of see again. It's definitely got before we shut up shop, but it's I think that process of what we've seen from earlier today right up until now is been great. And I mean, even from the designs there that you're seeing, have you got a preference that like out of all 5 of them that really resonates with you, that you prefer?
From the ones that I designed?
Yeah, the ones that are in front of us now, because usually what we would do in an ideal, well, if we had more time, the Adobe hemisphere goes very quick, but we would do like a nice little poll and see what everyone else thinks in the chat. But maybe tomorrow. But for now, is there any like preference that you have from left to right that you think? Yeah, I mean, I've got one, but you go first.
Okay, but I like people to tell me as well. Yeah. So the thing is that
I would love to, but the time, unfortunately, the Adobe hemisphere, it goes way too quick than it should.
I know.
But for tomorrow, stay tuned. We'll do that tomorrow. Promise.
I did the one with the fish first, because it's the first one that I did when I decided I was going to do this project. But then it came as a collection of stamps. So then I was worried that I need to show more than one. So I started developing, and I really want to do the one with the lady, because I don't do very many people in my work, and I really want to start making more humans. and
Can you
objects.
zoom in a bit on that? Because that was actually my. So we can we definitely got time. We can marvel a bit more because I can see the textures. It's so subtle and so faint, but they're kind of like, is that in the hair that they're kind of like almost like spider web kind of style, but it's very, very cool.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
these ones are all,
beautiful.
shapes that I draw. And I
Mm,
think I've done people before once, and I think I don't like to focus on the face because I think it's very difficult to create a persona. And I love to use the hair as a feature to really enrich it with texture. So to
mm,
me, I think, the fact that she doesn't have eyes or anything really tells like he's a very calm person because of the position. But I really
mm.
want to push it up in the hair and then with the elements that go around her. So I wanted to do that one, but I had that one ready yesterday and I felt just too short. But maybe I'll try tomorrow. If I have time tomorrow,
Yeah,
I'll try and I'll see if I can show you how that one could look in paper.
it
So
does look good. It does. I mean, I was between that one and the one on the left when I first saw,
which one?
because I get sorry, the was it grow some flowers? It's the second one in.
Yeah. So this I finished
Yeah.
it just before we met because I was like, oh, I need to have more. I need to draw more. Yeah, this is very new to me, very, very new. But I want my work to be like more kind of, I really like how people create like depth of field within the illustration. And I was
Mm,
really interested to see if I can bring that in paper and how I can transform that with the material.
mm.
I'm quite happy. I'm happy that you like this because it's obviously it wasn't a waste of time on my side, but actually
No, not at all. And I can
direct.
see in the chat, I mean, again, I feel terrible now of not doing a poll. If we had more time, we would have definitely done a nice little poll because they do go down well, the polls in there. But I can see we've got Cody's loving the sunflower one. And we can see, yeah, everyone in the chat are liking different styles. And actually, what I was even thinking, because obviously the shape of how it's kind of set up, obviously, I know we're working very much in the Postage kind of realm, but they could easily, well, depending on what it is, but be, for album covers or something that is kind of like square, like it sets itself up. I mean, yeah, a song about fishes, who knows? But more so maybe the one with the flowers in the hair. That kind of.
Let's get rid of the queen. And now you can have
Oh, you can't do that, Diana. It's all very patriotic now. It's kind of very
I know.
patriotic.
But what I
Mm,
mean is like, yeah, the idea is to create them more like as a poster. I mean, you're right. They could be anything and they could serve any purpose, but obviously like for my
mm.
shy perspective as an introvert working on illustration, then stamps feel a secure place. But
No,
yeah,
nice.
I think, I mean, I'm very excited because this is things that I created over the last 3 days. So this is
Yeah, great.
very, very
Yeah.
recent work. And I am so happy to see that I like what I'm doing and that
Mm,
it's
mm,
coming more, effortlessly. Because sometimes it's so hard when you really try to fight to do something and it's not coming out and you feel like, oh, what I can't deliver this.
mm,
So I'm really excited about being able finally to jump into something so different from what I'm used to do and for people to
mm.
be actually excited about that.
I mean, it is super impressive. And you mentioned obviously it's so fresh, right? From what you've done and the space of designing, creating, and then showing us it's I'm taken back, and I'm sure everyone else is definitely taken back by how sharp it's looking. And actually, on a final note, just before we close up, we've got Elizabeth has her favorite, who said that I like the Clean Oceans one more because of the lighter, no, sorry, the higher contrast and lovely lavender colors. Um,
Oh, that's
yeah, it's a good contrast there. You got like the gradients kind of thing happening, and the opacity lowered behind.
But you
Um,
see, I was
mm,
in a very, very lost place when I did the actual work because I was
mm,
here and I followed this guideline. And when I was doing this, I found that actually this composition wasn't working for me when I was trying to turn it into Illustrator. So the
mm,
fact that now I can actually convert my illustration, put it back and is more balanced. And what I like about illustration is that for so long I did replicas of things and
mm.
I replicated things. Everything was exactly the same. Now I feel that with illustration I can create my own world. I feel I can change the
Nice.
colors, invent new ways for things to exist.
You have
And
the
I
power,
love
Diana. Yes,
I
you
have
do.
the power. Yeah, I'm
You
not.
do.
Yeah, and that's why I think illustration is such a freeing way of creativity because You
Mm.
just create something that it wouldn't be possible to exist in real. It can only exist, in
Very
this.
much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. And again, so I mean, a massive thank you, because I feel like everyone in the chat has definitely got a real insight into who you are and to your work process. So, and the stuff you were saying about for tomorrow, people are in the chat already saying they're going to be tuning in for tomorrow. So I have no doubt they're going to
Yeah.
be back. But just to kind of wrap up now, so we'll be back tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific for part 2 of Diana, and join us where she brings her design into Photoshop. So you don't want to miss that out. And Adobe Live will be back tomorrow morning with Andy Lambert and Jordan Ellis on the Adobe Express channel. So stay tuned for that one, sure. So Diana, it's been my absolute pleasure to host you. Have you had a good time?
Yeah, it's great. I
Yeah.
was actually nervous, but I think it's been very enjoyable. Thank you.
Nice. That is what we like to hear. And of course, a massive thank you to our lovely Adobe Live audience, because without you guys, there is no Adobe Live. So thank you very much for joining. Thank you for those lovely questions. And of course, our moderators as well, keeping everything nice in the chat. So we will see you lovely people tomorrow. And remember, whatever you get up to, my friends, remember to put a smile on your face and do it. So we'll see you tomorrow, and take care. Bye.